Okay, so let's see what I've got here in my bag of goodies. So first up, we have a nice little Lubbock's fairy wrasse. Now all of these guys are going to look a little bit pale because they're a bit stressed in the bags, as I'm sure you would be if you were in a giant bag with a big ugly thing like me looking at you. But he's still really pretty, don't you think? Once they go in the tank, they should be fine. Once they calm down a little bit, they'll colour back up once they feel a little bit safer. So up next, we have a scarlet-headed fairy wrasse, another fairy wrasse like the Lubbock's. You'll start to see a little bit of a theme here eventually. So these guys are also really cool. He's pretty big for a scarlet head, but yeah, also again lost a bit of his colour, but he should colour back up really nicely pretty soon. I'm pretty excited about him. And last, but definitely not least, is something I've actually never come across before in a store, and I really wanted him, so I had to have him. Well, like, I didn't have to have him, but you know, is a filamentous fairy wrasse. He'll have really bright yellow fins and this great sort of spine coming up off of his dorsal fin once he's nice and happy. So yeah, I'm really excited about this guy. You'll see a lot of people kind of open up each bag and get cups of water and start to pour them in one by one, and that works okay. But especially when you have multiple bags, I find it a lot easier to get an appropriately sized bucket and put all of the bags in there and then open them all up, have there be one body of water, and then add your water to that so that they're all acclimating together rather than trying to control 3 different bags at once. So what's an appropriately sized bucket? Good question. Prepare to get a bad answer. It depends. It depends on the size of the bags. You pretty much just want a bucket that will fit the amount of water that you have, obviously without overflowing, but you also don't want a bucket that's too big so that when you release all the water, you have your fish with their fins poking out, laying on their sides. So you want there to be enough water in the bottom of the bucket so that they're all comfortable and you know, don't freak out on you. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a knife, ask your parents, and we're going to cut open all 3 bags. Alright, so all 3 bags are open now. So what we're going to do is we're going to take them and pour them all out as quickly as we can. We want the fish to come out with the water. We don't want all the water to come out and then the fish to sort of just plop out into it. You don't need to stress too much about it. You can't mess this up too badly. So what we're going to do is we're just going to turn the bags upside down, throw them out quickly, and while you've got the other bags in there, they'll prop up the water so that you get a decent level in there. Make sure that you don't have a fish left in the bag. Check to see that you can see them in the bucket without lifting the 3rd one out so you don't get the water level to drop. Just tip it over. Again, check there's no fish in the bag. Count them, 1, 2, 3. Perfect number, my favorite number for today. And when you're doing this as well, especially with fish like wrasses that really like to jump out and then, you know, die, you want to put something over the top. It would be nice if I had a lid for this, but I don't. So this is sort of a workaround solution. It's just a net and I'm going to hold it down. So that's getting the fish into the bucket. Now how do we acclimate them? Another very good question. Wow, you're so smart. Bucket, check. Net, check. Fish, hopefully check. Up next, instead of pouring little jugs of water or cups of water in here, a better way to do it is using just a piece of airline hose. It doesn't cost very much. You'll probably have some laying around if you've had a tank for a while. The reason we use this is because it gradually drops water into the bucket. It sort of equalizes all the parameters between the tank they're going in and the water in the bucket in a more gradual way that the fish are more comfortable with. So all you're going to do is you're going to take one side of the hose, you're going to put that into the water of the tank. Make sure it doesn't come out, otherwise it'll break the siphon. Then with the other side, what you're going to do is you're just going to give it a little suck. So what you do next is you have a pretty strong current of water. You want to slow it down, so you just tie a little loop in it, tighten it up, and you'll see that instead of having a stream of water, the more we tighten the loop, we start to get just a little bit of a drip. If you tighten the loop and you still want it a little bit slower, then it can go and you tighten it all the way. all you need to do is just tie a second loop into it and start to tighten that one, and that way you can control your flow rate pretty well. So that's about where I like to have the water. If you're using a bigger bucket, you can bring the flow rate up a little bit more because you're equalizing between a larger volume of water. Now, you just wait. You don't want to really leave this unattended. You want to keep an eye on the fish, especially ones that are likely to jump, like these guys. The net is helpful, but I still wouldn't trust it. You get to spend time with your new friends, and how exciting does that sound? So, how long do we leave them in here? So there are a lot of rules about, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Honestly, the time isn't as important as sort of what you're trying to achieve. So the whole idea of trying to equalize between the two tanks is so that the fish don't go into shock when you put them in the new tank. So if the salinity is really low in this bucket and the salinity is really high in your tank, as soon as you put them in, the fish's system is going to get a shock. It may not be able to compensate for that, and it can do a lot of damage, and it can stress them out really badly to the point where they'll even die. Temperature, salinity, pH are probably the ones that you need to worry about the most. But by adding small amounts of your tank water over a gradual period of time, you slowly start to bring the water that's in the bucket closer to the levels that are in your tank without having that sort of sudden jump from one to the other. Going back to how long you want to do this for, what I'd recommend is you actually take a way of measuring the salt so you can see when they're level, rather than just leaving it for a time frame and assuming that they're okay. If you can get the levels to match within 5 minutes, then they're ready to go. You sort of want to gauge it not based on time, but by how similar the water is. And probably the easiest one to test, and the one that I normally go with, is salinity. Temperature, you've got a little bit of leeway with, and as you're adding the warmed water from your tank, that should equalize out pretty well. pH, as long as both of your tanks, the tank that you got it from at the pet store and your tank is doing okay, your pH shouldn't be too far off. The one that tends to vary a lot is salinity between pet store water and the tanks that you'll be keeping. Okay, so to test the salinity, what you want to do is you want to use something called a refractometer. Now you've probably seen hydrometers. Well, I'll talk about all this stuff in a video later on, but basically refractometer is the way to go. Now, the important thing to remember with refractometers is that they have to be calibrated, and that's something that lots of people forget a lot of the time. And if your tools aren't calibrated, then whatever they're telling you is basically just a lie, and no one likes being lied to. Let's be honest. Have you ever played Mass Effect? You remember your boy Garrus, and he was just calibrating those weapons just right so you didn't die in the last mission? It's like that. It's important. It stops things from dying. So what I do is I use a product called Accuracy, and this is just a stock solution that you use on your refractometer. It's set to be at 35 ppt, or about 1.026 specific gravity. So you put your solution on there, then you use the little screwdriver that comes with your refractometer. It should have a little calibration screw here, and you just adjust it until it reads 1.026, because you know that's the salinity of this, and you want to match the calibration to your calibration fluid. Don't skip out on it, remember to do it. So, once it's calibrated, clean off your calibration fluid. I've already tested this with the refractometer. This salinity of the quarantine tank is 1.020, which is a little bit lower than you'd run an actual tank, but a lot of the fish stores run their salinity quite a bit lower, so I've had this lower just in preparation for new fish coming in. So all we're going to do is we're going to get a little syringe, draw water up, push it out just to get a clean sample to clean away anything that's in the syringe. So just a sample from the bucket that is currently acclimating. Same thing again, just use a little bit of the water to wash the prism off. Close the slide, look up at the light, and have a look what the reading is. So this one is actually reading 1.020, as well, which is quite nice. So that's the reason that I keep my quarantine tank at a salinity that's closer to what the fish stores tend to use, so you don't have to spend as long acclimating. You don't want to keep them in the bucket for too long because they're quite stressed in there and they tend to release a lot of waste, and it's a small water volume, so it builds up quite quickly. You have to worry about the water being oxygenated as well, since there's nothing agitating the surface. And basically, you don't want your fish to die, because it's not fun when that happens. I mean, you don't want your new friends to die. I don't like it when my new friends die. I don't like it when my old friends die, but I don't know where I'm going with this. Anyway, these guys are honestly pretty much ready. If you wanted to be more pedantic, you could do a pH test as well. But the pH at the store, I know them quite well. It's pretty similar. The temperature, just by feeling it, it's pretty close. The temperature in the bucket's probably a little bit colder, but that's to be expected since there's no heater in there. So that should be okay. So I'm going to leave them just for a little bit longer just to be safe. But while I do that, this is my quarantine tank. I think it's quite nice as far as quarantine tanks go. But as you can see, the rock is in a nice pile in the middle, which isn't so nice. I cleaned this tank yesterday and bunched up all the rocks so I could vacuum up the sand, give it a good clean out, changed out almost all of the water so to be ready for new fish to come in after the last batch. And so I think I have to quickly build up an aquascape so they've got somewhere nice to live for the next 4 weeks. Alright, so I'm somewhat happy with that. I kicked up a bit of gunk, but it's all just cyanobacteria, which should settle out pretty quickly. It's not going to bother the fish. Really, I should have done this before the fish came, but I wasn't really expecting to buy fish today. But I mean, nice surprises are what make life nice. Okay, so these guys are pretty much ready to go in now. Now with circular buckets like this, it's a little bit hard to use a net, especially because it's got, this one in particular has a little divot in the bottom. That makes it kind of hard to scoop up the fish without hurting them. I'm a little bit worried about squashing them against the side. So with this little bucket, what I tend to do is I just use my hand to pick them up. Before you do this, make sure you know what fish you're dealing with, because a lot of marine fish have poisonous spines or just sharp spines. So none of these guys do, so I'll be fine, but please don't try and do this with a lionfish or a fox face or something like that, because I mean, I just don't need any angry emails. The other thing I like about using your hand is you can cup a little bit of water so that the fish isn't actually out of the water for too long. So that's him there. And I'm not going to give you guys a nice shot because it's more important that he goes in this tank straight away. And then what I like to do is I sort of just like to let them find their own way out when they're ready. So then I'll just sort of cast out into the big open world. If they're really reluctant like this guy, I might sort of just give them a little bit of encouragement. Isn't he pretty? Also, just a little point, I'm not assuming his gender, he's most definitely a male. Fairy wrasses, and a lot of wrasses actually are sexually dimorphic, so you can tell males and females look quite different. So he's a little boy. So that's the Lovex fairy wrasse. He won't get too much bigger than that, a little bit bigger, but absolutely gorgeous little fish. And good sign, so he doesn't seem too distressed. It's completely normal that he's just gone and dashed into the rock. And yeah, he should be happy, hopefully. Up next, I think we'll do the scarlet head. Okay, so we've got him here. Again, same thing, into the tank. Looks nice and warm. You can see he's quite a lot bigger than the Lovex. Fairy wrasses are actually, that's a hair, that doesn't belong there, so I'll just take that back out with me. Fairy wrasses are a really great family of fish that I find are really underappreciated. They're absolutely gorgeous. They're really not very expensive. Like that Lovex wrasse, I got him for $25 and he's a gorgeous fish. He's an absolute bargain. So they're hanging out together in that little rock section there facing each other, which is quite nice. Makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside. So last but again not least is the filamentous wrasse. So just give him a little poke under the chin, begin to come off the bottom, and then once he's up at the surface, scoop him up in my hands. I'm going to put him straight in so I don't bother him. You're not going to see him very well anyway, if I try to show him in the camera. So he's gone quite, you'll find a lot of fish go really dark when they're stressed, and it's sort of a camouflage response, so they can't be seen as easily. So there you go, he looks pretty good. Obviously a little bit nervous, but no, really encouraging. He still straight out, not even darting into the rocks. So that's great. That's really encouraging. Okay, and that's that. One more point on the rock. I like to make sort of a couple little structures throughout rather than just sort of one big rock structure. And so that's if the fish aren't getting along, one's sort of bullying the others a little bit. There's different places where they can go without seeing each other. There's not sort of just one big cave for them to hide in. You can see the scarlet head has come out now as well to hang out with the filamentous. I don't know if you can see it in the footage at the moment, probably not, I'll get a better image later. But the reason they call these guys fairy wrasses is because you can see at the back of their dorsal fin, they have like a little flutter, like the beating of the wings of a fairy. So not the most masculine name, but I mean, it's pretty, and I think they're pretty, so it works out great, I think. So that's it. My fish are now in quarantine. They'll stay here for about 4 weeks, and assuming there's no diseases. If not, then they'll be in here for longer while I treat them. And yeah, that's the process. I'll probably switch the light off now just so they can relax a little bit, settle in. The filamentous doesn't look at all worried. I think I actually saw him try to grab a few pieces of cyanobacteria floating by, which is, you know, a great sign. So yeah, that's that. Fish in the tank. Happy Dean. Sorry about the lighting in this video.